I want to like sort of wrap up our conversation about Galadriel by like referring to this like more common phenomenon. You guys were talking about like in various words, you guys were both talking about like telegraphing things, you know, instead of like actually conveying them on the screen. And I think that one thing that you mentioned after we watched the first 2 episodes was this like generic tough girl facial expression that we see on so many like sort of female action hero characters in movies these days, in like, you know, your Marvel movies, in like
Star
we talked
Wars.
about this when The Mandalorian,
Yeah.
where there's like an unreality to, there's these facial expressions that are supposed to characterize like determinedness and like toughness and like authority, like when who's the human character that we don't care about in this show? The lady,
mom?
Yeah, the
Bronwyn.
single mom. Bronwyn, you know, when she goes in at the end of episode 2 and she goes into the tavern and is like holding the head of this orc, and what is she? I don't even remember what she says, but it's like, we're leaving by duskfall, if that's the thing. You know, I don't know. I just made up that line. But like, it's just like
Dusk down.
this sort of like challenge that she throws out, like,
Yeah.
we leave by dawn. I don't know. It's just like this nonsense. It's like, it's not compelling, you know, like, I don't know what it is about, you know, Furiosa where it somehow works in Mad Max.
I was
Fury Road, where it's
just
so,
thinking about her. That's
where
amazing.
it so
Sorry.
seldom
Yeah.
works. That's like one of the rare
Yeah,
exceptions.
well, maybe because like Charlize Theron, we don't spend like the entire film watching her just like
right.
Well, yeah. Oh, man.
for our listeners, I just did like the tough girl face.
Yeah, there's this face, and you see it on a number of characters.
Yeah,
and
I
not just in this show. And it's part of this larger phenomenon of like strong female characters,
Yeah.
but also of like sort of telegraphing acting in general.
Yeah.
where it's not actually conveying an emotion. It doesn't feel like it's coming from within the actor, and that's like, aside from sort of like the ridiculous like feminist element that often is present with this, I think my biggest complaint about it from an aesthetic perspective is that it doesn't feel like it's coming from a real place within these actresses.
Yeah.
Maybe because like they don't actually, it might be that they don't actually have that in them.
Yeah.
But they're being told to convey it anyway.
I think we
so
talked
it's not
about
convincing
something
in a way that many male actors can pull it off.
Yeah,
you know?
I think that we talked about that on The Mandalorian. When we
with
discussed
not
it.
with the Gina Carano character, but with the female Mandalorian
right.
in season 2.
Because of course the Gina Carano character doesn't have to do anything to like indicate her toughness. She like is legitimately tough,
Right.
you know, and she's like
Right.
sacrificed something of her like stereotypical femininity to buy that, you
Right.
know. You know, maybe with Furiosa it was like shaving her head. I don't know, but
right.
But like being an actor is a scary thing.
Yeah.
It's a scary thing when you're hired to like go up in front of, I mean, in this case, millions of people and convey something. Like, this is your character. You are strong and tough and you won't let anything stand in your way. And I mean, like, look, the best of us have a hard time getting there, you know? But if we don't have like guides, you know, who like understand, like how does like, I don't know, how do you find that?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, to say nothing of like all the noise, right? The sort of political or ideological noise that is attendant with that, and the pressures.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that like that for a lot of actors, you know, put into that situation, it would be like for us, like as a Catholic, like having to play a saint, I think, you know, maybe a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for this analogy is that the reason I'm bringing this up is because like, I think that for a lot of us, we would be really intimidated and have no idea like where to even start. But knowing that this is important and that a saint is like a thing at a certain pedestal, and there's a lot that rides on this portrayal, a lot that needs to be conveyed that I am not.
Yeah.
I wonder if like the strong female hero warrior is a little bit of that for like the secular feminist today.
You know what? I feel like the one exception to this, before, if I can just say this really quickly, it's like the character who we only see very briefly, but the dwarf princess Disa or whatever,
She's awesome.
Durin's wife. No, we only see a little bit of her. And given like the way that like the sort of diversity thing was like hyped up by the studios in what I see as like a somewhat cynical way, and we can talk about that later, you might have expected them to put her in a sort of like this kind of like stiffly empowered role, like with all like pretty much every other female character in this show so far, other than the Hobbit's characters, the Harfoot characters. But she actually has just like, I feel like this is just the actress letting her own personality come through. She's like friendly. She's spunky without being like in a sort of like in a like stereotyped kind of again like telegraphing spunkiness kind of way.
If I was surprised,
it's very natural.
If I was surprised at how much I disliked the Galadriel performance, I was surprised at how much I liked this Dwarf Queen performance. But sorry, Nathan, you wanted to jump in on something.
Yeah, just this aspect of telegraph. Like I think what we're all kind of trying to get our hands on here is this. Yeah, you mentioned natural, and even goes back to what we were saying about Elrond. There's a difference between these performances where the actor just feels, they seem relaxed, they seem to not just embody, in terms of like body motion, but like, like they have the spirit of the character. They have the fullness of the character. They are fully themselves in the role. And yeah, you see that with Princess Disa, you see that with Elrond. And you see it kind of in a mixed way with some of the Hobbit performances, which maybe we can talk about next. But like basically, but with Galadriel and others, well, I'd say Bronwyn, and then the elf archer who's falling in love with her in the Southlands, Arondir. You see this. It's this curtailed way of relating. It's this kind of, and Thomas and I were talking about this earlier this week, where my what I sort of floated to him was this, these massive productions, they have obviously certain expectations to fulfill to their investors, that they, at the end of the day, they have to put out something that at the very least appears to be like a real product. Because these performances, there's just something so kind of rushed about them. There's something, it's basically gesturing at the idea of an emotion. It's not actually the emotion. And but this is very common in television. Like this is like half of the television style of acting, at least in American television. Like it's this, if you can kind of just get part way to sort of say, it's not a case of saying, this is what the character is feeling. It's saying, it's more like a ratification of the actor's ability to kind of feel in general, where it's like, clearly this person can act, clearly this person can kind of create some kind of like other character, but they're not actually getting to where they need to, the actual feeling where they're experiencing it. It's more like they are kind of just like projecting themselves into it, if that makes sense. I'm sorry if I'm mangling the actor terms exactly, but we're trying to put our finger on why is it more natural for some and why is it less for others. And there's this like gap of reality. There's this gap of like someone is being more real, not just necessarily really themselves, like, but they're being more really this character and
not more realistic either necessarily.
Yeah. And some real. People they're scraping, like there's a certain scrapingness to it. There's this, you can see the effort, you can see the exertion, and it's just like, it's a wall. Like there isn't, it's not something that you're actually kind of being brought into, being invited into, which, has a potency and it has an unpredictability and it has life, instead you're just hitting the wall of an interpretation that's just completely closed off. And so that's the challenge for every production ever, but it's particularly a problem in television, I think, and I could be wrong with this. I think it's largely to do with not just writing, but time on set to really kind of milk and mellow out and just, have the space to kind of do what you need to do.
But I think it's also a particular problem with this this character, the strong female warrior, right? Not saying that these such people don't exist, but I think that like we don't understand them. And I think that we don't understand them, to the degree that we don't understand women.
The other thing I want to mention is going back to like the feminist thing is that, everybody's always complaining about how few women there are in Tolkien. But like the way that that's handled is actually to like erase womanhood and erase femininity. So there's actually fewer women in this show than there are in Lord of the Rings. You know, there's the amount of female bodies that you see on screen has nothing to do with like the portrayal of womanhood. Femininity is very, very like present in Tolkien, even like as like a hidden motivator and like a hidden power.
Dude,
you know?
Man,
and so that's actually missing when everything has to be on the front lines, like in society too. Like you're actually losing like the actual power of womanhood.
Yeah, I just listened to the part in the appendices dealing with Arwen and Aragorn's relationship.
Oh, great.
And I was like almost moved to tears by the end of it. I thought it was like so beautiful. It's so romantic. It's so moving, you know, and Arwen just like totally gained like a whole whole new thing in my conception of her.
Yeah.
Like, and
what does she gain by Peter Jackson adding in her like writing to rescue Frodo in the place of
But I'm also thinking about this Rings of Power show and how this elf and human relationship here is just like, oh, like you can't be together because like our peoples don't like your peoples, you know?
Yeah, they don't talk about like there's a reference to like, oh, all these past relationships have ended in tragedy and that's why they never happened, but like there's not the sense of like mortal and immortal and that whole like aspect.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, cultural prejudice yet again.